Hey Twisters, it's Nick, and today I'm going to talk to you about 5 Stanley Cup playoff matchups that I want to see in 2022. So we're getting kind of close to the playoffs beginning. We're about 2/3 or 70% through the regular season. What I did was I took a look at the standings and I thought, okay, so which teams could potentially face each other in the first round? Which of those matchups would I look forward to the most? And what are some potential matchups we could see outside of that as well? So I've got 5 different types of playoff matchups. So I actually made categories out of these. No repeating teams either. So we have 10 of the 16 teams represented here. So to break down my categories, I first have a barn burner, so the most offensive-minded playoff series we could have. We have the Donnybrook, which would be probably the nastiest rivalry we could potentially get. We've got the aesthetics matchup, so looking at jerseys and uniforms. We've got the hidden gem, so something that you guys might not know in particular could be a great matchup, but I thought about it a little bit and I selected one of those. And lastly, we also have a marquee matchup in terms of one player versus another player. So I've got one playoff matchup for each of those categories. And of course, I want to know which playoff matchups do you want to see, and let me know in the comments down below, okay? So just before I get started, as a lot of you know, I'm a San Jose Sharks fan, so I have no skin in this game. There are a couple of teams that I don't want to see win the Stanley Cup, that's for sure. As for the actual cup matchup that I want to see, I've told some of you out there, I really would love to see the Colorado Avalanche against the Florida Panthers. I think that a 1996 rematch would be amazing with Jumbo Joe Thornton raising the Stanley Cup in Game 7. That's what I'm hoping for. I'm also going to be cheering for the Minnesota Wild. I am kind of a pseudo Minnesota sports fan as well. So those are where my biases are. I'm not even talking about the Minnesota Wild in this video, strangely enough. So anyway, we're going to get started with the barn burner. And so the Florida Panthers lead the NHL in goals per game at 4.12. So can you think of much more of an exciting first round matchup than the Florida Panthers against the Toronto Maple Leafs, who are 4th in the NHL right now at 3.70 goals per game? You have absolutely stacked forward cores. You've got the big four in Toronto, right, with Matthews, Marner, Tavares, and Nylander. And then in Florida, you've got Barkov, Huberdeau, Verhaeghe. Vetrano could score 25 goals on the top line if he was in that sort of a role. Not Spencer Knight. Why am I saying that? Sam Reinhart, that's another guy there. Anton Lundell. So great stacked forward cores for those groups. You got Campbell versus Bobrovsky, guys who kind of have a bit of a chip on their shoulder, I would imagine, going into the playoffs. And most notably, you have teams that haven't won playoff series in forever. So the Leafs last won a playoff series in 2004, and for the Panthers, yeah, it was 1996. It was the Eastern Conference Final. So something definitely has to give here, and there's a good chance they can meet in the first round. So if they do, I'm hoping that we get ourselves quite a barn burner. My next category here is the Donnybrook, so I'm talking about a particularly nasty series. Love to see those in the postseason without question. So as a Sharks fan, there's nothing more sweet when your team is out of the playoffs than watching two teams that you just absolutely loathe beat the shit out of each other. So that's what I'm hoping for here. And the way the standings are looking right now, it could very well be the LA Kings and the Vegas Golden Knights in the first round. These two teams met in the first round 4 years ago, and the LA Kings, I think, got swept. Neither team could buy a goal, but Vegas was just a little bit better. The Kings still have many players who are part of that team, with guys like Kopitar and Doughty and Quick and Dirty Dustin Brown. And so I think these guys haven't forgotten just yet, and they want to really make a statement. And you know the LA Kings, when they get into the playoffs and not too many people are talking about them, they can certainly make some noise there. And as for the Vegas Golden Knights, yeah, they've had a very tough season, but I think they could feel like a new team, you know, if they get Mark Stone back for the postseason and they got the whole band clicking together. So I do think this could be a pretty spirited matchup. I do think there's a little bit of bad blood between these two teams. Not the fiercest rivalry in the NHL right now, but while we wait for the Anaheim Ducks to be good, you know, LA has to have a team that they're fighting against. And so I would think that Vegas would be a good team, if not Calgary, in the battle for Daryl Sutter, essentially. My next category would be a possible Eastern Conference Final. It is my marquee matchup, and for this I chose Igor Shesterkin versus Andrei Vasilevsky. How awesome would that be to determine who goes to the Stanley Cup Final? In one corner, you've got Vasilevsky, who won the Conn Smythe last year, who had 5 shutouts in the playoffs, a 1.93 goals against average, and a 937 save percentage. And then you're pairing him against Igor Shesterkin, who has a 942 save percentage and has been absolutely lights out for the New York Rangers this year, taking the team on his back for a lot of that season. Could be in the Hart Trophy conversation for all I know too. And then you think about the crossover between these two teams. So guys like Barclay Goodrow, they've won a Stanley Cup in Tampa. Now he's playing in New York. Look at Ryan McDonough, of course, that infamous trade a few years ago. Don't you think that he wants to stick it to the Rangers in the postseason? So I think these two teams meeting up in the Eastern Conference Final would be absolutely wonderful and really good for TV ratings too. I think a lot of people would tune in for that. My next category here is the aesthetics matchup. So I'm talking about jerseys, I'm talking about uniforms, what people wear in the stands. I think that is a factor as well. And for that, it would have to be a Stanley Cup final matchup, Pittsburgh and Calgary. Just love how the color scheme would totally complement each other with red and yellow for Calgary, black and yellow for Pittsburgh. The fans in the stands, you know, all the Pittsburgh Penguins fans would be wearing their black and yellow, maybe like yellow t-shirts or something like that. Calgary's got the sea of red, so everybody's wearing a red jersey out there. Would love to see a Canadian team actually win the Stanley Cup this year. And Calgary has really taken me by surprise, I would have to say, this season. And lastly, what's really cool about this is that these teams actually started winning Stanley Cups around the same time. So Calgary won its first cup in 1989. 2 years later, it was Mario Lemieux, Jaromir Jagr, and the Penguins winning one Stanley Cup, and then the next year repeating as back-to-back champions. And my last category is the hidden gem, so this is something you might not be thinking about. So I would actually like to see in the first round the Colorado Avalanche against the Nashville Predators. This is something that could definitely go the distance. These teams have had a very even-spirited matchup so far this season. The Predators have actually won 2 out of 3 games. The Avalanche lost one of those in overtime, I will say that. But it has been a very even matchup at 12 goals scored apiece, so that's 4 per game, so we'd get some goals in the net. Nashville was really good last postseason against the Carolina Hurricanes. That went 6 games, but a couple of overtime and double overtime games there. And they lead the NHL in fighting majors, so these guys can get gritty, they can get under your skin, they can really dust things up. And for a team like Colorado, who's going to be facing the pressure, I think that might be a good way to try and get under their skin and steal a couple of games. And despite all that talent on Colorado with guys like Landeskog, McKinnon, and Rantanen, and Cale Makar and Kadri, right? Jussi Saros is potentially a goaltender who could put a team on his back for a deep postseason run, even as an 8th seed. Not that that hasn't been done before in Predators history with Pekka Rinne. So I do think this would be one of the possible matchups for you guys to look out for in this upcoming playoff season. So there you have it, guys. 5 playoff matchups that I want to see in 2022. What are yours? You guys let me know down in the comments down below. Let me know what Stanley Cup final matchup that you want to see as well. Stick around. We've got more content multiple times a week, including live streams as well. We're doing all kinds of content here on Twisted Wrister Hockey. And for that, you can actually watch some of our more recent videos right here. See the video description down below if you want to follow me on social media or donate to the channel. I certainly appreciate that. And if you haven't already, make sure hit the thumbs up. Click that red subscribe button down below and stay tuned for more banger hockey content. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Once again, I'm Nick. I'll catch you later. Ciao.